Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's P&G Alumni Network webinar series. This is your host, Ileana Rojas, and I'll be emceeing for you today. And I'm very excited for our guest today, Pete Carter, who will be sharing with us the recipe for creating a winning Super Bowl ad, which cannot have a most perfect timing. But before I pass it on the baton to Pete, let me take you through a couple of announcements. Hold on. Okay, let me take you through a couple of announcements on how the web series work. This is a monthly series where our goal is to connect members and provide enriching content where we hope you learn something new and leave you inspired. And we do this by leveraging the expertise that we have within the network. Our webinars are also recorded so that you can go back and review anything you want to listen to again or share with your friends via our P&G Alumni Network YouTube channel. All of this is part of a bigger mission of the P&G Alumni Network, which is a nonprofit founded by former P&G employees to share ideas, talents, and resources with each other, our communities and philanthropy efforts. With more than 35,000 registered members in 45 chapters worldwide, the P&G Alumni Network is officially recognized and supported by P&G. We connect via global conferences, local chapters, industry events, and online content. Our nonprofit foundation supports economic empowerment initiatives in communities around the world. If you're not aware already, our 2019 Global Conference is in Madrid, Spain, set up for October 24th through the 26th. Our last conference was held in Cincinnati in October 2017 and was a huge success, attended by alums from all over the world, including inspiring and thought-provoking speakers and breakout sessions and workshops. We hope to see you this coming October at our next conference to be held at the Intercontinental in Madrid. You can find more information on the network's website at pngalums.com, which, by the way, just relaunched, and if you haven't checked it out, I invite you to do so. And I also invite you to register to receive P&G Alumni Network newsletters and emails, where you will receive more information about the global conference as well as other exciting events from each of the chapters near you. Now, a couple of notes on the webinar logistics. This is your webinar screen. This is where you'll see the content, the polls, the slides, etc. One thing you won't see is webcams. To the right, you'll also see the control panel. You'll notice that your line is muted to avoid hearing the dogs barking in the back or any other distracting noises. But don't worry. If you have questions, you'll still be able to ask them through the control panel at any time through the webinar, and we'll have time towards the end of it to go through them. Note that the question you ask will only be visible to me, and I do apologize beforehand as I may not be able to get to all the questions, but I'll do my best to go through most of them. The other thing to note is that there will be videos during the whole presentation of today's webinar. And in order to hear the audio for this videos, you must have your computer volume on to do so. So if you're calling in by phone and you're looking at the webinar through your computer, you need to have also the volume of your computer on to hear them. Now, with no further ado, let me introduce you to Pete Carter, who will be speaking to us today about the recipe for creating a winning Super Bowl ad. Pete is the Group Director of the Brand Building Integrated Communications Department at P&G. He is our first panelist that actually is still working at P&G. And it's an in-house strategy, production, and communications consultancy consisting of 50 seasoned managers. During his 38 years at P&G, Pete has made numerous contributions to the business. Specifically, he created a new advertising campaign for Pantene, Herbal Essences, Vidal Sassoon, Rejoice, Cascade, Dawn, Swiffer, Duracell, Ariel, and Tide. He has helped to define the core equities of these brands and create winning advertising with our agency partners. This work has resulted in unprecedented levels of share growth, several Super Bowl ad winners, as well as numerous industry awards like the Effies, Cannes in Lyon, and the Grand Prix. Having worked on 3 different continents, Pete has also led the thinking on new global marketing models and integrated communication tools that have given P&G the edge over competition. Pete's many contributions to P&G have culminated in his induction into the Harley Procter Marketers Society in 2007, and to date, only 18 people have held this title during the company's 180-year history. Externally, Pete has lent his expertise to the Ad Council and the Cincinnati Airport Board, and he has been a featured speaker at the SBSW, Eurobest, and the Cannes Advertising Festivals, a jurist for the Cannes Lion, the American Effie Awards, the Clio Awards, and was published in the Harvard Business Review. Pete, thank you so much for being with us today, and now I'll pass it on to you so you can take us through the exciting presentation. Give me 1 second. How are you, Pete?
Okay, thank you, Ileana. Good morning to those of you who are joining the webcast today. Let me just make sure I'm doing the right thing here. Okay, should be showing up on your screen. As Ileana said, I'm the group director of what's called BBIC. Some of you would have known us as ADD, or the Advertising Development Department. And there may even be a few of you who knew us as Copy Services. The organization that Norm Levy and Gibby Carey founded over 51 years ago is still thriving and working at P&G across every touch point that we have: TV, print, out of home, radio, social media, display, and in-store. Today, I'm going to share with you a recipe for making a winning Super Bowl ad. And while I'm the one speaking, I need to credit one of my colleagues, Ye-Yun Chow, who did the original analysis on this. This was something that we shared with several of our brands this year in order to help them to create better ads. Let's see if this works. Okay, so why am I talking about this? Well, I feel like I can speak on the topic because during my career at P&G, I've been lucky enough to work on 3 different Super Bowl spots, something we called the Tide Talking Stain, which was in 2007, Tide Miracle Stain in 2010, and you can see the theme there, and then something called Pantene Dad Do in 2015. Each of these efforts generated a lot of learning about what makes a Super Bowl ad successful, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. So let's talk about the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is the most popular event in American sports. Over 100 million people tuned in to this year's game to watch the New England Patriots beat the LA Rams. But football wasn't the only thing on people's minds last Sunday night. There was parties, there was pizza, there was a lot of beer. And as we found out, some with corn syrup and some without. According to the Department of Agriculture, the Super Bowl Sunday is America's 2nd largest food consumption day, following Thanksgiving. 60% of all food ordered on Super Bowl Sunday is pizza, with chicken wings a close second, and beer and soda consumption are also record-breaking. But unlike urban lore, there is no real drop in New York City water pressure during the halftime bathroom break. So what has the Super Bowl given us? The Super Bowl is also the biggest showdown in advertising. Each year, some of the world's leading brands compete for the consumer's love and attention in the Super Bowl of advertising. Brands have learned that the buzz that these commercials get before, during, and after the game can put some big points on the scoreboard for their business. In 1971, on a hilltop in Italy, Coca-Cola taught the world to sing, and it was a perfect harmony for beverage sales. In 1978, McDonald's encouraged people to recite the recipe for the Big Mac, and another billion burgers were sold. Probably the most famous ad in Super Bowl history was launched in 1984, putting Apple on the road to becoming one of the world's most valuable companies. More recently, in 2010, Betty White played football in the mud for Snickers and launched the "You're Not You When You're Hungry" campaign. And in 2015, a little kid in a Darth Vader costume drove Volkswagen to victory by remotely starting the car. Rewards of a Super Bowl ad are enormous, but so are the risks. In 1967, a 30-second Super Bowl ad cost about $43,000. This year, a 30-second ad cost an advertiser $5.3 million. While that was an outrageous amount of money, consider that most of the great ads over the last few years have been at least a minute or longer. In fact, last year, Tide bought 75 seconds of this very expensive airtime for its a Tide ad series. So when you add in the cost of celebrity talent, special effects, tight timelines, A-list directors, the cost of participation in the Super Bowl can easily grow to $10 to $20 million. As a result, you've got to sell a lot of Tide to pay that out. With all that financial risk, BBIC decided to take a look at the most successful Super Bowl ads from the last decade and see if we could discern a winning recipe. To do this, we started with the highest rated ads in USA Today's Ad Meter. For those of you who don't know, Ad Meter is an independent online survey tool which asks everyday Americans to rate each ad in the Super Bowl on a scale from 1 to 10. USA Today normalizes the data and reports the winners after the Super Bowl. Most advertisers and agencies believe it's a good tool to measure consumer sentiment, and it has over 30 years of historical data to compare and contrast. For our analysis, we took a look at the top 3 Super Bowl ads from the last 7 years. So, what does it take to make a great Super Bowl ad? You're going to need 3 main ingredients: a cup of surprise, a generous scoop of emotion, and 3 tablespoons of brand equity. I'll talk about each of these in detail in a minute, but some of you may want to season your ad with a pinch of Hollywood or football celebrity. Our analysis showed that celebrity talent can give the effort some additional dimension and buzz value, but it's not really the winning concept. In other words, Tom Brady is not an advertising idea. You need more. So let's talk about the key ingredients. First one is surprise. Competition for the viewer's attention is fierce in the Super Bowl. If you don't have something surprising that will stop the audience and make them pay attention, then you'll go unnoticed. And the only thing worse than a bad Super Bowl ad is one that nobody remembers. A winning ad must be disruptive or have an element of unexpected drama that causes a response like, "I've never seen that ad before." In our analysis, 83% of the top 3 ads had an element of disruptiveness or expectedness that helped it stand out. Usually, this was achieved by smashing 2 things together that are normally apart, or an outrageous or unexpected storyline. Now for the good part. I'm going to show you 4 examples of this element of surprise. The first one comes from Budweiser. It's called Puppy Love, where it's the story of 2 unlikely friends, a dog and a horse. The second one is called Blue Pill for the Fiat X launch. And it really answers the question of what would happen if a car got a bit of Viagra. The third unexpected story is around Doritos ultrasound and how even babies in the womb can't resist Doritos. And lastly, something from 2019 called The Elevator, where Jason Bateman plays an elevator operator who brings passengers down to the most uncomfortable experiences in life, including buying a car. So let's see if I can run these ads and you'll see them.
Well, you only need the light when it's burning low. Only miss the sun when it starts to snow. Only know you love her when you let her go. Only know you've been high when you're feeling low. Only hate the road when you're missing home. Only know you love her when you let her go. And you let her go.
Subito.
The all-new Fiat 500X crossover. Bigger, more powerful, and ready for action.
And there's your beautiful baby.
Any day now.
Really? You're eating Doritos? He's eating Doritos. On my ultrasound. That's what I have to do.
I know.
Give me that.
Okay, looks like the last one wasn't there. All right, we'll move on. Let's see here. Okay, the next element or ingredient that we have is called emotion. And cognitive science tells us that most of our actions are determined by our emotional response to outside stimulus. Advertising which makes us laugh or cry is more likely to imprint a memory than one that has no emotional connection. We've done several studies which prove that all emotional responses are good, even if they're irritating for the moment. Think about the success of Charmin and Mr. Whipple. The only emotional response that you want to avoid is indifference. In our analysis, 100% of the top 3 ads elicited a strong emotional response. The most prevalent was funny, like Amazon's The Day Alexa Lost Her Voice. This was followed closely by charming and heartwarming stories like Michael Bublé's ad for Bubbly and the Budweiser classic Horse and Trainer. And this year, there were a couple of ads that were annoying, like the Colgate Close Talker. I hope they air a lot of that one. And one that elicited fear, Olay's Killer Skin. Let's take a look at the type of emotion needed to win a Super Bowl ad.
In Austin, it's 60 degrees with its
Alexa?
Amazon's Alexa lost her voice this morning.
Alexa lost her voice? How is that even possible?
We have the replacements ready. Just say the word.
You're sure this is going to work?
Yeah.
Alexa, show me a recipe for a grilled cheese sandwich.
Pathetic. You're 32 years of age, and you don't know how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. Its name is the recipe, you...
Alexa, how far is Mars?
How far is Mars? Well, how am I supposed to know? I've never been there. This guy want to go to Mars. For what? There's not even oxygen there.
Alexa, set the mood.
Now setting the mood. You're in the bush. And you're just so dirty. And it's so sweaty. Because it's hot in that bush.
Alexa, reboot.
Let's play some country music. No, Alexa, country music.
Alexa, country music.
Alexa,
Call Brandon.
I'm afraid Brandon is a little tied up. But do let me know if there's anything I can help you with. Jessica? Good boy.
Thanks, guys, but I'll take it from here.
Ooh, that's very bubbly. My favorite.
You mean bubbly.
No, I mean bubbly.
You're Michael Bublé. That's a bubbly.
She's right, Michael Bublé. It's pronounced bubbly. I know, thanks.
It's pronounced bubbly. I know, thanks. Davy.
Can I have your autograph, Mr. Bubbly?
Bublé. Sparkling water. Crack a smile.
Michael.
Don't do that.
To my love.
Climbed the mountain and I turned around. Well, I've been changing, 'cause I built my life around you. But time ain't older. Children get older. And did you see my reflection? Snow covered me. Well, a landslide down.
I'm a close talker, so I was excited about all new Colgate Total. It kills germs through my whole mouth.
Yeah.
Now there's no such thing as too close.
Yes, there is.
No, there's not. New Colgate Total. Do more for your whole mouth.
I can't unlock my phone. I can't unlock my phone. I recognize my face. I've been using Olay. It has totally transformed my skin. 28 days ago, I looked like that. Bananas. That's you.
Your skin's glowing. You could be a movie star.
You could be a movie star.
Really? No.
So as you can see, all of those ads had some kind of strong emotional response. All right, let's move on to the third ingredient, and that's what we call brand equity. As brand builders, we have always recognized the importance of the brand's reputation to the advertising. Brands which consistently and persistently reinforce their equity tend to win in the marketplace. That's why for a winning Super Bowl ad, the message needs to reinforce the brand's benefit or essence while making a relevant link to the current culture. If the ad doesn't do this, it becomes nothing more than a waste of $5.3 million. Consumers will remember the funny ad, but not what the brand could do for them or what the brand is about. That's a big miss. Ads which had a strong link to the brand equity where the brand equity was the most discerning element of our winning recipe. In our analysis, only 50% of the top 3 ads had a strong link back to the brand. That's because this is a difficult task, making the brand the center of the story. A couple of brands have done this well. We're going to see the Heinz Wiener Stampede, Hyundai's First Date, and then a couple of examples from this year, the M&M Bad Passengers and Planters Crunch Time. Let's take a look at these ads.
No, I can't forget this evening, or your face is evening, but I guess that's just the way the story goes. You always smile, but in your sorrow shows. Yes, it shows.
It's hard to resist great taste. Meet the ketchups.
You look good.
You look good.
Thank you.
Hey.
See the guy taking my little girl out, huh?
Yep.
Huh. You know what? Why don't you go ahead and take my new
Thanks,
car?
Pops.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Pops. Go ahead, baby.
Watch this.
Watch this.
Favorite spot?
Favorite girl. You got me with the one guy.
You're taking me home. Car fun on the Hyundai Genesis.
Back so soon?
Here you go, sir.
Because a dad's got to do. What a dad's got to do.
Honey, what you guys do tonight?
All right, guys, come on. Get your foot out. Get your foot off the table. Hey, stop.
I'm not doing anything.
Okay, do I have to break you guys apart? Stop it. Stop it, guys. Come on. Stop touching me. Okay, that's it. If you don't stop, I will eat all of you alive right now.
I prefer the break us apart option.
Introducing the M&M's chocolate bar.
And people think I'm nuts. Always there in crunch time.
Don't get him, nothing!
So now you've got the ingredients. Let's move on to the recipe itself. We think you should start your search for a Super Bowl ad at least 6 months in advance of the game. At P&G, most of the brands who are considering a Super Bowl ad start sometime around August. In our business, it's essential that we give our retail partners a heads up long before the ad is finished. That way, we can lock in incremental merchandising support or new distribution around the Super Bowl. Even if you have the best Super Bowl ad, and if you don't have retail support, it could significantly diminish the business impact of this effort. This was the case with the 2017 Mr. Clean ad. It was a great ad, scored very well on Ad Meter. I think it was number 6 out of 66 ads, and yet mediocre trade support led to insignificant business impact. I have to play that ad because it's one of my favorites, and I think it's really an ad where we did a really good job of blending all the elements together.
Sarah? Clean enough? Clean enough?
I just love that ad. Okay, let's go to the next slide. The second part of the recipe is give your creative team a broad brief. The Super Bowl is the perfect time to reinforce your core brand equity. If you make the brief too narrow, you'll miss some of the possible connections that the brand could have to the culture. And since you've got such a broad audience, you really want your brand to appeal to the broadest group of people. Then you want to mix the ingredients and stir vigorously for several weeks. Winning Super Bowl ads are rarely created on the first presentation. Give your team enough chances to find the right combination of surprise, emotion, and brand equity. For example, we saw several rounds of work before the agency showed us the Tide Talking Stain ad. And when you get the balance right, you get an ad like Budweiser's Stand By You from 2018. When you get it wrong, you get Sprint's recent entry with Bo Jackson, a mermaid, a couple of robots, and a flying horse. Ugh. Anyway, I'm going to show you both of these. The second one was actually number 52 out of 58 in this year's Super Bowl. Okay, let me find the cursor again. There it is. This first one I think you'll enjoy.
I'll be right there.
I'll be right there.
The storm is affecting thousands of families. People still in desperate need of aid.
When the night has come, and the land is dark, and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by. So darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me.
How do we tell people they get the best of both worlds?
How about we get two sport legend Bo Jackson holding a mermaid, playing a guitar,
Oh, don't you just tell people Sprint can save them more than $1,000.
An LTE advanced network that's now to 2 times faster than before.
Bo does know.
This is the best robot analogy I've ever heard.
With a great network and savings on Verizon and AT&T, get the best of both worlds with Sprint.
Okay, weird stuff cannot make an ad better. That's for sure. Okay, and the last thing you want to do is you want to bake it high heat with a trusted production company. Many Super Bowl ads require complex and intense production schedules. Be sure to use a production supplier who is up for the challenge. Also, be prepared for last-minute changes. For the Mr. Clean ad, they needed a male dancer to create the prototype for the animation. They originally thought that an exotic dancer would be the ideal candidate. However, in rehearsal, they found that this guy only had one speed, full on. As a result, they ended up choosing a classically trained ballet dancer because he could provide the range of sexual expression in the dance. Also, on the subject of last-minute changes, I can tell you that the Tide Miracle Stain ad that I worked on was supposed to be a 30, but after several edits, we realized that we needed more time to tell the story. So we bought an additional 15 seconds just 5 days before the game. Next, you have to release your ad or the teaser on the Friday before the game. The media is looking for sneak peeks, and this is the ideal time to give them a taste. If you have enough money to provide a teaser like Amazon did this year, you can do that too. All of this will build anticipation for your ad. And lastly, be sure to create a second screen online program during the game. Millennial and Gen Z consumers are watching the game with one eye and checking their Twitter feed with the other. Be sure to have a live community management program in place during the game to amplify the impact of your ad like these brands did. Planters, Bud Light, Game of Thrones, Red Hot, and Verizon. Some of them didn't even have an ad in the Super Bowl, but they used their second screen to make an impact in the Twitter sphere. In the end, the recipe for a winning Super Bowl ad is the same as any great TV ad. You've got to blend a big idea with brilliant execution and a strong emotional hook. The difference is that the stakes are much, much higher. But some brands do it, and when you do it well, it can pay big dividends. So, looks like we've got a few minutes for questions. If anybody has any questions, you can send them to Ileana and she'll read them to me. I'll try my best to answer. Ileana, anything? I can't hear you if you're... So someone sent me a question. Oh, there you are. Okay. Ileana?
Thank you for everything, Pete. Sorry about all of this technical difficulties. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so it was an awesome presentation. Thank you. And thank you for everyone that was listening. I saw some of your questions and I'll start reading them. The first one is about the future and going forward. And in one of your recipes about the part of surprise and disruption, how do you envision this whole shift to digital and that becoming more and more important? And you even talked about, you know, having two screens at the same time. How do you envision this evolving?
Well, you know, the Super Bowl is a great place to experiment. We're getting a little feedback, Ileana. Okay. So one of the things that, you know, we see happening is that people are engaging more and more on digital and on digital platforms in order to enjoy the Super Bowl and to share the experience with others. I'm still getting some feedback. As a result, what you need to do is make sure that you've got some kind of second screen program going. I don't think that the Super Bowl is going to be shown on your handheld mobile device anytime soon. It's not going to be consumed that way. Okay, people want kind of the stadium experience in their home, and as long as that is there, I think we're going to see that television, or at least big screen viewing, whether it's with a paid subscription service to the NFL or something like that, is probably the way we're going to consume it. And so we need to adapt our advertising messages to those formats in order to take advantage of so many eyeballs together at one time looking at the entertainment.
That's awesome. Okay.
Well, I don't know about awesome, but I tried to.
Okay, there's another question. Other than not having in-store support for Mr. Clean in 2017, have there been other regrets in hindsight for P&G ads in the Super Bowl?
No, I don't think there's been regrets. Maybe early on, we didn't really know what we were doing. I think you may recall that the first Super Bowl ad that we ever did was a Mr. Clean car wash ad. And I don't think that they had any kind of in-store support for that as well. And I will tell you about something that most people don't know, which is actually where we had a big win without buying a Super Bowl ad. The Pantene Dad Do program was rated in the top 5 of all Super Bowl ads the year that we did it. And yet, we never bought a national Super Bowl spot. We only bought spots in 7 markets. But because we released it at the time everybody else released, and because it contained football players, and it was an interesting story, had a lot of emotion, the news media picked it up as a Super Bowl ad. We ended up in Ad Meter, and we ended up in the top 5 because of it, without ever spending the money on a Super Bowl ad. We spent about 20% of what a Super Bowl ad would have cost us that year. So that was a way that we kind of outsmarted the system, and it worked.
And I think that actually...
We also saw a major uplift in our share because we bought all of the markets that were our key trade customers were located. And so they all saw the ad as part of the Super Bowl, and they had supported it with in-store merchandising.
Actually, that answers some of our listeners' questions. Let me, oh my God. I'm so sorry. There are many questions coming in. Last year's It's a Tide ad spots are among my all-time Super Bowl favorites. I consider they perfectly blended all the elements you mentioned, especially brand equity. Could you tell us a little bit about how they were created?
Yeah, the Tide team actually put a lot of effort into this. This was like the 3rd or 4th time the Tide had done an ad in the Super Bowl. So they were very cognizant of what they needed to do. They started several months ahead of time, as I suggested. And the agency the agency is Saatchi in New York, and they got just about every creative in the office to submit ideas for the Super Bowl. The agency had a big presentation. It was sometime in like early September. They chose like 3 different directions and then narrowed them down, refined them, and by October, I believe they had the idea that they wanted to use. And then it was just a matter of refining each of the stories and figuring out how much time they really needed to tell this story. Because as you recall, it's a story where you have to kind of set it up that, you know, the guy comes out from under the car and he goes, yeah, see that white shirt? That's a Tide ad, you know, and you got to set that up. And that was like a 30. And then there were, I want to say 3 15s that they bought after that so that people could see the sequence. And each time they took a genre of advertising and did a little rug pull. Some of it was with our own advertising. I know they took Old Spice and did an Old Spice takeoff. You thought you were watching an Old Spice ad, and then really it was a Tide ad. So all of that surprise element worked extremely well, but it took a lot of time. They shot that ad probably, I think it was almost a full month ahead of time. So they had a lot of time to edit and edit and edit. That wasn't the case that we had with one of the ones that I worked on with Tide, where we had to wait for the NFC and AFC championships to occur, which are only 2 weeks before the Super Bowl, before we could shoot the ad, because we wanted the story to be about the two teams. So sometimes you're down to the wire, and sometimes you're not. I know the Olay ad this year, they were down to the wire in editing. I saw several edits the week before the ad actually placed.
We have time for a couple more questions. The first one, can you talk about the tension between communicating to a tight target audience, normal advertising, versus the real broad audience of a Super Bowl? And for example, when is a broad audience a waste of money versus just, the gratification of putting your ad there?
Yeah, I'm kind of conflicted on that, because I have seen some brands who really have been very successful with a very narrow message that seems to be targeted to very few people, be very successful in the Super Bowl, and yet it's an opportunity to reach the broadest audience. And what I think is happening, and I'll give you the example, for many years, there was an ad that was on the Super Bowl, and I'll go back to the 1990s, because that's when this was, for Master Lock. And Master Lock, they spent their whole year's budget for advertising on one Super Bowl spot. And that was because they wanted to get their name out there, and they had this great demo where someone took a gun and shot a bullet at a Master Lock, and the lock doesn't come off the doors that it's trying to lock. Okay? And that one thing propelled them to, brand name status. People understood what Master Lock was all about. It was very compelling. That's all they needed to do. Other brands, most brands, have used the Super Bowl to reach a broad audience with a broad message. And so when you're talking to a broad audience, especially for a lot of our products, the Super Bowl makes a lot of sense, because it is such, we do sell mass products. Okay, I know the world has moved to one-on-one mass communication, but that's only for part of the time. People are still watching television or television-like objects with advertising, and they're consuming consumer products. So if you've got a broad message, great. If you've got a narrow message but need some brand recognition to break out of the clutter, that's also a way to make it happen. I know I always wanted to do our Tide stain pen ad that we did on the Super Bowl drove not only stain pen sales, but it was one of the biggest contributors to Tide laundry detergent sales for the entire year. So we got a lot of halo effect from advertising one of our niche innovative products at the time.
That's great. And the last question, what is your favorite Super Bowl ad of all times?
Oh, well, I guess I'm with the crowd. I think the 1984 ad is indelibly etched in my memory. It only aired once, but it has all the emotion, all the surprise, all the brand equity. It really created the brand equity for Apple. So I have to hold that one up as my favorite. Mr. Clean would be a close second. Okay.
That's great. Okay, Pete. Well, we just have a couple of minutes left and a couple of slides to just go through. I want to thank you very, very much for sharing your time with us. and sharing all of these amazing ads.
Hey, thank you. It's been fun.
A couple of quick closing comments. On all our webinars are recorded so that you can go back and review anything you want to listen to again or share with your friends via our P&G Alumni Network YouTube channel. We also invite you to get involved. Sign up for updates on our pngalums.com website. Support the foundation at pngalums.com foundation. Partner with us at the sponsor part of the website, and either volunteer, start or join a chapter, or let us know of any other thoughts you might have through hello@pngalums.com. Next month, we have another exciting webinar with Shane Meeker. So join us on March 12th at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear more about the movie guide to better business. Thanks again for joining another exciting webinar. This is your host, Ileana Rojas, and I wish you all a great rest of your day, wherever in the world you may be. Thanks for joining.
Bye, all.